What if I told you the greatest secret in history isn't buried in the past, but is alive today? Forget theories, forget speculation. We're talking about credible reports, suppressed evidence, even genetic clues suggesting the last descendant of Sarah, the daughter of Jesus Christ, has been found living in Europe. Yes, the daughter the church tried to erase. The lineage they swore never existed. For centuries, they hid the story of Sarah, child of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, silencing gospels, rewriting history. But the truth of the Sangreal, the royal blood, persisted, protected by secret societies like the Templars. Now, whispers are turning into evidence. Ancient texts meet modern science. And the Vatican's deafening silence on the matter only deepens the mystery. Who is this descendant? What proof exists? And why is this revelation considered so dangerous it's being kept under wraps? This investigation uncovers the trail. The church tried to bury a trail, leading directly to a living person who could change everything. Before we begin, I want this to be more than just a video. I want it to be a gathering of truth seekers. If you are facing any struggle in your life, any battle or any pain, I invite you to write your prayer request in the comments now. We are a community that believes in the power of prayer, and we will lift you up. If you feel this calling to uncover what was hidden, comment with the words, "I want the truth." Your support is what makes this mission possible. Please, like this video to help this truth reach more people, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single step of this incredible journey. Now, prepare yourself. The search for the lost bloodline begins. So, who is Sarah, this figure erased from the official narrative? According to the Gnostic traditions, the apocryphal Gospels, and the persistent legends preserved in southern France, she is far more than just a forgotten name. She is the physical embodiment of the sacred union between Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene, the daughter, the heir, the living continuation of the Sangreal, the royal blood. To understand her significance, we must first look again at the evidence surrounding her mother, Mary Magdalene, found in the very texts the church tried to destroy. The Gospel of Philip, discovered at Nag Hammadi, calls Magdalene Jesus's koinonoshes, companion or consort. It speaks of Jesus loving her more than all the other disciples and kissing her often, suggesting a profound intimacy that transcends simple discipleship. The Gospel of Mary portrays her not as a follower, but as a leader, the one entrusted with Jesus's deepest, most secret teachings, sparking jealousy in Peter. Pistis Sophia, another Gnostic text, shows Magdalene as the primary questioner, the one who understood the spiritual mysteries best. These texts, buried for 1,600 years, paint a consistent picture. Mary Magdalene was central to Jesus's mission, an initiate, a partner. This wasn't just a spiritual connection. The Gnostics believed the divine manifested through union, both spiritual and physical. And the fruit of this Hieros Gamos, this sacred marriage, was Sarah. Her story, intertwined with her mother's, continues with the legendary exile. As tradition holds, after the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene, pregnant or carrying the young Sarah, along with Martha, Lazarus, and others, were cast adrift from Palestine in a sailless, oarless boat. Miraculously, they landed on the shores of Gaul, at the place now called Saintes-Maries-de-la-Mer. This arrival wasn't just survival, it was the planting of a sacred seed in new soil. And it is here, in the Camargue region of France, that Sarah's own identity takes center stage, preserved not by stone monuments, but by the vibrant, living faith of the Romani people, the Gypsies. Every year, they flock to Saintes-Maries-de-la-Mer to venerate Sara-la-Kali, Sarah the Black, their patron saint. The church offers a sanitized version. Sarah was merely an Egyptian servant accompanying the Marys, but the Romani know better. Their oral tradition, passed down faithfully outside the church's control, holds that Sarah was the daughter, the princess. Her very name, Sarah, meaning princess in Hebrew, echoes the royal matriarch of the Old Testament, Sarah, wife of Abraham. It's a declaration of lineage. And the name, Kali the Black? This is not simply about skin color, though she may well have had Egyptian or Ethiopian heritage. from time spent in Alexandria. In medieval symbolism and Gnostic thought, black represented the hidden, the esoteric wisdom, the gnosis kept from the uninitiated. It connects her to the mysterious Black Madonnas scattered across Europe, figures representing the suppressed, sacred feminine, the Sophia, the divine wisdom often linked to the Egyptian goddess Isis. Sara-la-Kali is Sarah the Wise, Sarah the Keeper of Mysteries. The annual Romani festival, where her statue is carried into the sea, is a powerful ritual reenacting the arrival from across the water, celebrating the survival of the hidden lineage. It is an act of defiance against the official narrative, a testament that memory can be stronger than stone. But why was this memory so threatening from the very beginning? Why did the existence of this child, and later her potential descendants, pose such a fundamental threat to the emerging Christian institution? The answer lies in the core conflict of the early church, the battle for spiritual authority. Jesus himself established Peter as the rock, laying the groundwork for apostolic succession authority passed down through appointed leaders, a controllable hierarchy. But Sarah represented something far older, far more potent in the ancient world: hereditary succession, the divine right passed down through blood. If Jesus had a daughter, a living heir carrying his sacred bloodline, then the direct connection to the divine was not through Peter's institutional church in Rome. It was through Sarah and her potential descendants. This undermined the very foundation of the bishops and, later, the Pope's claim to unique authority. It suggested that the Sangreal, the royal blood, held a spiritual legitimacy that no council or emperor could grant or take away. This conflict between the appointed authority of the institution and the inherent authority of the blood lineage, the engine that drove the centuries of suppression, censorship, and violence that followed. Sarah wasn't just a child. She was a living challenge to the entire power structure being built. Her existence had to be denied. Her story had to be erased. And the possibility of her continuing that dangerous bloodline, through marriage and children, had to become the most forbidden secret of all. To truly grasp why Sarah's existence, and later her marriage, were considered such a profound threat, we must understand a concept deliberately erased from mainstream Christianity, yet central to ancient spirituality and the esoteric traditions that protected the Magdalene lineage. This concept is Hieros Gamos, the sacred marriage. This Greek term literally means sacred union or divine marriage. In ancient traditions across the world, Sumerian, Egyptian, Greek, and even within mystical streams of Judaism, Hieros Gamos was not just a wedding ceremony. It was a profound spiritual and often physical ritual representing the union of divine opposites, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, the masculine logos and the feminine, Sophia, principles of creation. This union was believed to regenerate the world, restore cosmic balance, and manifest divinity on earth. Within Christian esotericism, particularly among the Gnostic schools whose texts were later banned, Hieros Gamos was rescued and applied directly to Jesus and Mary Magdalene. They were seen not merely as two important individuals, but as earthly incarnations of these complementary cosmic forces: Jesus as the Logos, the divine word, the heavenly light of the Father, and Mary Magdalene as Sophia, the divine wisdom, the hidden feminine aspect of God, the earthly vessel needed to ground that light. Their union, from this perspective, was not just romantic or physical. It was alchemical, world-changing. It was the mystical fusion designed to heal the separation between God and creation, spirit and flesh, that defined the fallen world. This sacred marriage, according to these suppressed schools of thought, was not merely symbolic. It was believed to have actually happened. A union that fulfilled not only human love but a cosmic necessity. And this brings us back to the image of a celibate Jesus. Why does the Church insist on this image when the cultural context of first-century Judaism points in the opposite direction? Within Jewish tradition, especially for a rabbi, a spiritual teacher, marriage was not just expected, it was considered essential, a fulfillment of God's command to be fruitful and multiply. Celibacy was rare, often viewed with suspicion, especially for someone presenting himself as a master fulfilling the law. This is why so many scholars argue that the image of a celibate Jesus was a later theological construction, shaped by the influence of Greek asceticism and the political needs of the Roman Church, not by the historical reality of a Jewish rabbi in Galilee. The apocryphal texts, like the Gospel of Philip calling Magdalene his companion and mentioning intimate kisses, directly challenge this constructed narrative. If we accept the possibility, strongly suggested by both cultural context and suppressed texts, that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were united in a true Hieros Gamos, then the existence of a daughter named Sarah becomes not just plausible, but spiritually necessary within this esoteric logic, because the sacred union, in all ancient symbolism, is fertile. It bears fruit, and this fruit is twofold. On one hand, the fruit is spiritual, the revelation of higher knowledge, the gnosis, transmitted through the initiatory lineage. On the other hand, the fruit is also physical, the birth of a royal lineage, the continuation of the divine mission in flesh and blood. Sarah, in this context, represents far more than a historical child. She is the living link that unites both realities, the visible and the invisible. She is the heir of the mission, the wisdom, the word, and the physical presence. She embodies the fruit of Hieros Gamos. This is why traditions speak of her with such reverence, even in whispers. And this is why her marriage, which we will explore next, was treated with such secrecy and protection. Because it wasn't just a daughter getting married. It was the messianic legacy itself, intertwining with the history of the world, silently, far from the pulpits and palaces. And this brings us back again to the Holy Grail. As we decoded earlier, the Grail is the Sangreal, the royal blood. Mary Magdalene, by carrying Sarah, is the original Grail, the sacred vessel. And Sarah, by carrying this lineage forward through her own life and marriage, becomes the living expression of this ongoing mystery. She is the Grail made manifest. The Knights Templar, protectors of this secret, understood this symbolism deeply. Understanding the sacred marriage between Jesus and Mary Magdalene is not just a romantic theory, it is an initiatory key. It unlocks a deeper understanding of the Messiah's mission and the true suppressed role of the sacred feminine in Christian spirituality. It reveals that salvation came not only through the sacrifice of the cross, but also through the conscious union of the divine masculine and feminine, wisdom and light, body and spirit. This union, according to the Gnostics, is not just an ancient event. It is a spiritual model for inner integration, a call for each soul to unite these divine forces within themselves and awaken to their own spiritual nature. But the Church, obsessed with controlling the narrative, feared what this meant. Because a Jesus who loved, married, and fathered a child lived as a complete human being, this makes him closer, more real, more accessible. And precisely for this reason, more dangerous to a theology built to keep the people dependent on priests as the sole intermediaries. The concept of Hieros Gamos establishes Sarah not just as a historical child, but as the living embodiment of the Sangreal, the royal blood, the continuation of the divine mission in flesh. But for that lineage to survive, especially in a hostile world where her very existence was a threat, a crucial next step was necessary: marriage. The traditions are fragmented, veiled in allegory and secrecy, precisely because this union was considered so dangerous. But according to the alternative records and esoteric histories that survived the Church's purges, Sarah did not live out her life in monastic seclusion. Her mission was continuity. She is said to have married into the local nobility of southern Gaul, likely among the Visigothic or Frankish families who held power in the region after the fall of the Roman Empire. This was no ordinary marriage of convenience. It was a strategic alliance of profound significance. Imagine the context: a young woman carrying the most sacred and hunted bloodline on earth. Her survival, and the survival of her potential offspring, depended on powerful protection. Marrying into an influential local family would provide that security, embedding the sacred lineage within the very power structures of the emerging European kingdoms. But which family? This is where the story connects to one of the most enduring and controversial mysteries of European history: the Merovingian dynasty. The Merovingians were the first dynasty of Frankish kings. ruling over parts of modern-day France and Germany from the 5th to the 8th century. They were figures shrouded in legend. Known as the long-haired kings, their uncut hair was a symbol of their sacred power. They were reputed to possess mystical abilities, including the power of healing, hence the nickname thaumaturge kings, or miracle-working kings. Their origins were deliberately obscured, hinted at being semi-divine, different from ordinary mortals. The controversial theory, brought to mainstream attention by books like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, posits that the Merovingians' claim to mystical legitimacy stemmed from a secret they guarded fiercely, their direct descent from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene through Sarah. This hidden heritage, it is argued, was the true source of their divine right to rule. While mainstream historians dismiss this, the clues persist. The Merovingians used symbols deeply connected to the Magdalene tradition, the bee often linked to ancient goddesses and royalty, found in the tomb of the Merovingian king Childeric I, and later the fleur-de-lis, which some interpret as a stylized bee or a symbol representing the lineage circumcision. They practiced a form of Christianity that often clashed with Rome, seemingly preserving older, more mystical traditions. And the geographical heartland of the Merovingian kingdom overlaps significantly with the areas in southern France most strongly associated with Mary Magdalene and Sarah. The mystery deepens when we consider the enigma of Rennes-le-Château. This small village in the Languedoc region became world famous due to its late 19th century priest, Bérenger Saunière. Saunière suddenly became inexplicably wealthy while renovating his church, dedicated, significantly, to Mary Magdalene. He embarked on lavish construction projects, filling the church with bizarre, esoteric symbolism, a devil holding the holy water font, cryptic Latin phrases, unusual depictions of the Stations of the Cross, local legend, and the documents Saunière allegedly discovered hidden in a church pillar suggest he found proof of the Merovingian secret genealogies tracing their line back to Sarah, and thus to Jesus. Whether Saunière found real documents or tapped into a powerful local tradition, Rennes-le-Château remains a focal point for researchers investigating the hidden lineage, a place where the stones themselves seem to whisper of a suppressed history. And who were the protectors of this explosive secret throughout the Middle Ages? The Knights Templar. As we've established, their true mission may have been to guard the Sangreal. Their presence was deeply entrenched in the Languedoc, the heartland of both Catharism and the Magdalene legends. They financed the construction of Gothic cathedrals filled with coded symbolism, the red rose, a symbol of Magdalene and the Grail bloodline, the pentagram associated with the divine feminine, the Black Madonna statues often found in Templar sites. These weren't just architectural flourishes, they were messages, hidden in plain sight, preserving the knowledge of the sacred marriage, the surviving lineage, and the divine feminine principle that the official church sought to erase. Sarah's marriage, therefore, was not just a personal event. It was a prophetic act, a strategic move that allowed the Messiah's lineage to escape destruction and continue its hidden journey through European history, protected by secret societies and encoded in symbols, waiting for a time when the world would be ready to understand. The Grail wasn't lost, it was woven into the very fabric of history, hidden until the time of revelation. The possibility of a surviving bloodline, embodied in Sarah and potentially continued through the Merovingian kings, was more than just a theological inconvenience. It was an existential threat to the very structure of power the Roman Church was meticulously building. To understand the depth of the Church's fear, we must examine the tools they used to silence this truth. A systematic campaign of erasure, manipulation, and violence. The turning point, a moment that fundamentally shifted the course of Christianity, was the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Convened not by a spiritual leader seeking divine truth, but by the Roman Emperor Constantine, a master politician aiming to unify his crumbling empire. He saw a standardized Christianity as the perfect ideological glue. For this political project to work, the diverse, often contradictory tapestry of early Christian beliefs had to be consolidated into one controllable narrative. This council wasn't just about debating the nature of Christ. It was about selecting the official story and eliminating the alternatives. Dozens of Gospels that circulated freely, texts emphasizing Gnostic principles of inner knowledge, direct revelation, and the vital role of the sacred feminine, particularly those highlighting Mary Magdalene's leadership and intimacy with Jesus, like the Gospels of Mary, Philip, Thomas, were deliberately excluded. Why? Because they empowered the individual and challenged the necessity of a mediating priesthood. They didn't fit the imperial, hierarchical model Constantine needed. These texts weren't just left out, they were branded as heresy. Constantine himself issued decrees ordering the destruction of these unapproved writings. Possessing copies became a crime punishable by death. Libraries were purged, scrolls were burned. The historical record was being actively rewritten, cleansed of any narrative that contradicted the newly forming orthodoxy. Every mention of Jesus' potential marriage, every hint of children, every celebration of the sacred feminine had to be stamped out. Secret monastic orders, like those who hid the Nag Hammadi texts in Egypt, risked everything, burying their truths in jars, hoping future generations would unearth them. But the campaign didn't stop with texts. It extended to people, symbols, and memory itself. The systematic slander of Mary Magdalene by Pope Gregory the Great in 591 AD, transforming her from apostle to the apostles into a repentant prostitute, was a calculated masterstroke. It neutralized her authority, severed her connection to Jesus in the public imagination, and made the idea of her bearing his child seem blasphemous. And throughout the Middle Ages, the keepers of the secret continued to be hunted with ruthless efficiency. The Gnostics were persecuted into oblivion. The Cathars, who preserved traditions of the Sangreal in southern France, were subjected to a brutal genocide during the Albigensian Crusade in the 13th century. Over 1 million people massacred to silence a belief. The Knights Templar, suspected guardians of the bloodline secret, were betrayed, arrested, tortured, and burned at the stake by the combined power of the French king and the Pope in the 14th century. Even art and architecture became battlegrounds. While the Church commissioned works reinforcing its doctrines, hidden symbols persisted as a form of silent resistance. Initiated artists and builders encoded the forbidden truth in plain sight. The pregnant Magdalene subtly depicted, the crowned woman beside Christ, the recurring motifs of the rose, the chalice, the pentagram, all symbols of the sacred feminine, the Grail lineage, and the hidden knowledge, embedded in the very stones of cathedrals for those with eyes to see. This centuries-long, violent campaign reveals the depth of the Church's fear. They feared a truth that empowered individuals over institutions. They feared a lineage that bypassed their hierarchy. They feared the sacred feminine that challenged their patriarchal structure. And so, they waged war on history itself. The erasure of Sarah and her marriage wasn't an accident. It was a cornerstone of their long strategy for absolute control. They chose silence and suppression to maintain order, but as Magdalene herself prophesied, truth cannot be buried forever. Now that we have walked through the shadows of suppressed history and uncovered the motives behind the silence, we arrive at the most personal and perhaps most challenging point of this investigation. It forces us to confront not just historical facts, but the very foundation of our own spiritual understanding. It is time to turn the mirror inward and ask, if Jesus really had a family, if Sarah existed, if her marriage continued the sacred lineage, what does that truly change in your faith? This question isn't meant to provoke doubt simply for the sake of it. It is an invitation to courage, the courage to look beyond the carefully constructed narratives we were handed down, the courage to ask if the faith we inherited represents the whole truth, or a version edited for control, shaped by fear, and ultimately incomplete. For centuries, the dominant image of Christ projected by institutional power has often been one of divine distance, an untouchable figure, shrouded in celibacy, seemingly separated from the most profound and universal human experiences. Romantic love, partnership, family. This image served the institutional church well, reinforcing its own hierarchical, male-dominated structure and its emphasis on renunciation of the worldly. But did it serve the full radical truth of the incarnation God choosing to become completely human? Acknowledging the possibility grounded in historical clues and suppressed traditions of Jesus' marriage and Sarah's existence doesn't destroy faith. For countless seekers who have felt alienated by a distant, judgmental deity, it liberates faith. It frees it from the suffocating grip of dogma that insists God is somehow afraid of human love, afraid of the body, afraid of the feminine principle he himself created. What if this revelation doesn't make Jesus less divine, but makes us feel closer to the divine within our own tangled, beautiful human experience? What if it sanctifies our own struggles and joys in love, commitment, and family? What if it shows us that these core human experiences are not distractions from the sacred path, but are woven into the very fabric of it, blessed and lived by the Christ himself? This realization calls us back towards a primal faith, the kind of raw, direct spirituality that likely pulsed through the earliest followers before intricate doctrines and rigid institutions took hold. It's a return to the essence that Mary Magdalene, the apostle of Gnosis, likely taught Sarah, the revolutionary message that the kingdom of God is within you. It is not found solely in buildings of stone, administered exclusively by men in robes according to strict laws. It is found in the awakened heart, in the direct, unmediated connection between your individual soul and the infinite divine source. Contrast this liberating potential with the image often presented by institutional religion, a Christ so elevated, so removed from the grit and grace of ordinary life. That genuine connection seems possible only through prescribed rituals and authorized intermediaries. This controlled image, while perhaps offering a sense of order and certainty to some, often leaves the deeper, more transformative spiritual truths veiled. The truth of a God who understands our deepest human bonds, not through abstract observation, but through lived experience. Acknowledging Sarah's potential existence isn't about adding a forgotten saint to the liturgical calendar. It's about recognizing the radical fullness of the incarnation. It's about embracing a spirituality that doesn't force you to choose between your humanity and your divinity, but celebrates their sacred, intertwined dance. It's about understanding that the purpose of the divine entering the human wasn't just to forgive sin, but to elevate and illuminate all aspects of human life. This doesn't destroy faith. It rebuilds it on a foundation not of fear or blind obedience, but of authentic recognition and resonant truth. It liberates faith from dogma and allows it to breathe with the messy, beautiful, complex reality of life itself, the very life that Jesus came to live, fully and without reservation. This perspective invites us to embrace a faith rooted in love, in balance, in the courage to seek personal gnosis, rather than relying solely on external authority. It challenges the very notion that the path to God must be policed and controlled by institutions that have historically shown themselves willing to suppress truth in the name of power. This journey of discovery does not end here. This is just the beginning. If this investigation into Sarah's marriage and the suppressed sacred lineage has touched you, if it has awakened something in your spirit, we want to hear from you. Leave your prayer request in the comments. This is a community of seekers, and we are here to support one another. If you believe these hidden stories deserve to be told, your engagement is crucial. Like this video to show that this truth matters. Share it with someone who is also asking questions. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because the secrets we plan to unveil next go even deeper, potentially revealing the identity and location of the last descendant. The true legacy revealed through Sarah's story is not just about a forgotten marriage or a hidden bloodline. It is in the inspiration it offers to all of us who seek truth, who refuse to accept incomplete narratives, and who insist on hearing the voice, especially the feminine voice that was silenced by power. It is a testament to the enduring power of the divine to manifest in ways institutions cannot control. The truth was not lost, it was simply hidden, and now it is being brought back into the light. Keep watching, the revelation is just beginning.